Hello, welcome to Forest Focus, a shorter video today on Afcon primarily with a little bit on Jonjo Shelvey after reports around his move to Turkey last night and today in the media. So good to do something on Afcon to explain when our players could be back with six going away. Just before we get into that, as ever, a quick word to thank our sponsors, the Trent Navigation. If you look on their social media, I see they're giving away or competition to give away some tickets to the Blackpool game, and you can also watch that at the Nav if you don't get tickets. It's on Sunday, 2 o'clock kickoff, Forest v Blackpool FA Cup third round. And as we mentioned previously, stick around afterwards and you can watch Arsenal versus Liverpool on the big screen outside as the big tie of the round. Right, Afcon, let's talk about that for a bit and then we'll talk about Jonjo Shelvey. The tournament runs from January the 13th and it finishes on February the 11th in the Ivory Coast. So who are our players who are going? As you can see on the bit of a human centipede background there for Ivory Coast, it is Ibrahim Sangare, Willy Bolly and Serge Aurier. And then for Nigeria, it's Ola Aina. And for Senegal, it is Moussa Niakate and Cheick Kouyaté. So how it works is the top two teams in each group go through, and there are 6 groups, and the 4 best third ranked teams will go to the last 16, and then obviously it's quarter-final, semi-final, third, fourth playoff, and then final. So Ivory Coast are in a group with Nigeria, so that is Group A, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea, and Guinea-Bissau. Not sure if I'm saying that right, sorry. And Senegal are with Cameroon, Guinea, and the Gambia. So you would expect they would go through. They're among the favourites to win the tournament. Ivory Coast as the home nation, and then Nigeria are one of the bigger teams with Aina and not Taiwo. He would have gone, but obviously his injury prevents him playing. Sorry, forgive me one sec. But they've had some problems coming into the tournament, so results aren't great for them. But you would expect them to get through. And then Senegal are actually the bookies' favourites, and I think they're the defending champions with Niakate and Moussa Niakate. So it does present some big challenges for Forest, obviously in defence with Willy Bolly, not necessarily a first choice, but Niakate certainly is alongside Murillo, and Serge Aurier, and as a backup, and Ola Aina is one of our first choice players, and Sangare, who I imagine will be a first choice player once again over the longer term under Nuno. So the big question is, how many games will they miss? So they're going to miss the Brentford game, and obviously going to miss the FA Cup this weekend as well. But in terms of Premier League, they're going to miss the Brentford game because it just clashes with the group stages. The second round starts on the 27th of January with the Group A second place team. So that could be Nigeria facing third in Group C, second in Group C, excuse me, which could be Senegal, but not necessarily. And then that runs through to the quarterfinals on the 2nd and 3rd of February. So potentially the players could be back for the Arsenal game if you go out in the group stage. But like I said, I think that's unlikely with our players. They all play for pretty elite clubs. So maybe Nigeria have a bit of a horror show based on recent form and we get Ola Aina back, but it seems unlikely. So that's 2 games. The third game is Bournemouth away, and that clashes with the quarterfinals. So if you get knocked out in the second round, we could have them back for Bournemouth. The semi-finals are on 7th of February. So Forest v Newcastle is on the 10th. So that doesn't mean they'll be back because there's a third, fourth game on the 10th of February, quite annoyingly. And the final is on the 11th of February. Then our next game is against West Ham on the 17th of February. So to round it all up, definitely miss Brentford. A very small chance of playing Arsenal on January the 30th if our players are knocked out, or any of them are knocked out in the group stages. If you lose the second round, potentially back for Bournemouth away on the 3rd of February. If you lose in the quarterfinals, then you might be back, or you would be back for Newcastle on the 10th of February. If you make the semi-finals or better, then the return game is West Ham, but you'd only have 1 week to get back into England, get back into training, and get back into the team. So basically, we could be without these players for 4 games if they go far in the tournament. At best, 2 probably. I think there's another FA Cup tie in that period, but just focusing on Premier League, it could be 4 Premier League games plus 2 FA Cup matches. So obviously we'll have a big impact, and we'll put a focus on the squad, particularly in defence. Interesting to see Joe Worrell now linked with Leicester as well. Onwa Bamidele linked with a loan move away. Nino going to Zenit St. Petersburg, the player we were linked with. It seems likely. I saw Fabrizio Romano tweet that. So it does put the biggest strain on the defence. If we do sell Worrell, then Scott McKenna could go as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how we cope with that, and if we move in the transfer market to strengthen the defence. Maybe we do need an extra centre half. Willy Bolly's out of contract. We discussed this last night on the Q&A with Greg and Mark. Willy Bolly and Felipe are out of contract at the end of the season, as is Aurier, as is Ola Aina. I think the club have got an option on Aina's contract though, and it would probably make sense to retain him. But I think we will see a big turnover in defence again this summer. We see a big turnover in all areas of the team. Most summers, going back for quite a while, but I think that's definitely going to be the case this summer. So that should be the impact of Afcon. We could miss 6 players for 4 Premier League games, at least 1 FA Cup tie as well. But there is a chance that they miss fewer, maybe 2 matches. It all depends on how far their countries go. But they're all playing for pretty fancied teams, and I would expect that they certainly make it out of the group stages with I think it's only the 4th place teams and 2 3rd place teams that go out, so it is in their favour to at least make the second round. And then if they do make the quarterfinals, then it would impact them further, obviously. But they could miss Brentford, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Newcastle, and then be back for West Ham at home in mid-February. Hopefully that clears a few things up. The other thing I want to talk about just briefly today is Jonjo Shelvey. Obviously he's gone, and I'm sure not too many fans were disappointed by that when he moved to Turkey right at the end of the transfer window. He went to Rizespor. Is that how you say it? Yeah, I think that's right. It was reported at the time that he had gone on loan, but then later, last night, it was reported in The Guardian that actually it was a permanent deal, and Forest had rescinded his contract. It was because the Premier League clubs are only allowed to loan out 7 players, and obviously we've got a lot out on loan. There are exceptions for homegrown talent and younger players going out on loan. So players like Dale Taylor wouldn't count towards that. But we obviously have, it was going to be Shelvey, but Emmanuel Dennis, Panzo, Josh Bowler, players like that, all out on loan deals at the moment. So when it came to Shelvey going, the club had to make it a permanent deal. I'll come to how they clarified that today, or how it's reported in the media. It's been clarified. The Guardian report, like I said they'd rescinded his contract, and you can't just sack a player. So that would suggest, you can't sack a player without reason. Anyway, so it suggests they said they'd rescinded his contract, which suggests they've had to pay him up, or at least a percentage of his contract, which I think was 2.5 years when he signed. So he's not going to go out of goodwill, and he signed for that initial transfer fee, which I think was around 2.5 million at the time. So yeah, it's going to basically cost Forest a lot of money to have a player who was there for 8 months, barely played, fell out with the manager reportedly, and didn't win over the fans at all. So yeah, not the best deal there for Forest. A colossal waste of money, basically. Right, how have they clarified it then today? It was tweeted by John Percy from the Telegraph that it was an administrative error, and also a report in the Post by Sarah Clapson, my old colleague, stating it was made a permanent deal to address an administrative error and no rules were broken. Sarah wrote, it came as a result of developments which arose after the official announcement. Jonjo Shelvey did sign a 2.5 year deal. Sorry, a bit of padding there. So yeah, very expensive. Came as a result after the official announcement. Basically, Alex Mighten went on loan to Belgium, and I think there was some confusion around the rules, and his age pushed it, meaning that he was included in the 7 players, and Shelvey would have been 8th, which you can't have. So he went as a permanent move. Nothing to worry about in terms of rules being broken, it states. But it's just, it comes down to a signing that really didn't work out, and it's cost the football club a lot of money, I would say, by the sound of it. So that's where we're at. No new developments with FFP and all the reports around that. Still have to wait until January the 14th to find out what's happening. It's interesting following Forest Twitter online today about media agendas and stuff like that. I mean, just from my experience working in the media, there's no media agenda against the football club. I think if some fans seem to have the feeling that, okay, this is a positive report, I like it. This is a negative report, they must have an agenda against the club. I just don't think it works like that. It's a collective thing. If the club's under scrutiny, then the club's under scrutiny. It's not because, someone's out to get them. People saying, these FFP reports have come out at a funny time. Well, it's because the accounts now have to be filed in December. It's not, previously it was March, but they've moved it forward so they can deal with any infractions before the end of the season. Like we saw with Everton, it dragged out. They had their points deduction this season. The Premier League's trying to avoid that. So I don't think there's anything suspicious in and around the timing of these reports. Speaking very briefly to Kieran Maguire, he said that, there's been this rumour going around for a month that a Premier League club is in the spotlight. He doesn't know who it is. There's all this speculation that it's Forest because of all the signings. So we just don't know. We just have to wait and see if anything happens. But I certainly don't think the Premier League are out to get Forest. I don't think the media's out to get Forest. Just because we spent a few quid, I just don't think it means anything. The Premier League's going to look to throw the book at us unduly. Fulham came up and spent 100 million quid, but they had parachute payments and we didn't. So we did spend heavily. We did need to spend heavily because so many players had gone. Did we need to sign 30 odd players? Probably not. Has it been a bit haphazard? Yes, probably. Does it mean we've broken the rules? We don't know. I don't know. People speculating who have become accountants on Twitter don't know. We just have to wait and see what the Premier League decide in conjunction with Forest based on what's been reported. We know Forest have hired Nick DeMarco, or it's been reported Forest have hired Nick DeMarco, a top sports solicitor, to represent them and fight their corner. So yeah, it's a holding brief, but it's not the Premier League coming to get us because we're out to upset the status quo. No one went after Leicester when they won the Premier League, as much as, I shouldn't mention Leicester City on here, but no one's gone after Brighton for doing well. It's just we're under scrutiny because we filed our accounts and we might be sailing close to the wind, but we just have to wait and see. So it's very much a case of a watching brief. There's always stuff to talk about with Forest. There'll be more transfer stuff to talk about. Joe Worrell seems like the latest person of interest of what happens there. And we've got the Blackpool game to look forward to as well on Sunday in the FA Cup. So we'll preview that one in full and have a focus on that tomorrow, 10 a.m. with Temps and Mikey. We'll look at possible team selection and who we'd like to see play and how we go about the game. A big opportunity to hopefully start a cup run against a League One team. So do join us for that. If you've enjoyed this video or found it informative, do us a favour and like and subscribe. It certainly helps. And as I always say, very much appreciate all the support that people have shown us. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully it was informative around the Afcon stuff and hopefully Forest cope with it well. And we have some good results to talk about starting after the FA Cup on Monday's podcast. But do join us tomorrow if you can. In the meantime, have a good day and we shall see you soon.